Uncle Don.
Yes,
So one thing couldn't quite remember is how old were you when your dad died?
I was 12.
12.
You died in 1943 and I was still 12. He died 2 days before your mother's birthday.
I do remember that.
I never will forget that.
She couldn't believe the buses were still running. After he died, she thought like the whole world would be shut down in mourning.
That's possible.
You knew Mona, but to what degree?
She was my mother.
My sister. It's my sister, Ramona. It was her mother. That's why she's my niece, because Ramona was my sister, one of my two sisters.
So pretty soon after your dad died,
Yes,
there were some changes for you.
yeah, probably 10 minutes afterwards.
And is that when you went to the ranch?
Yes, correct. That same summer was my first summer down in Brookings at the ranch. And then when I came back, I went to high school at Washington High School. Wait a minute, no, I didn't. I was still going to Vestal because they never had junior high schools in those days. They were smart. So I went back to Vestal, yeah.
Mom went to Washington High School.
Yes, that's correct. But she was 3 years older than me, so you're way ahead of me.
Right.
3
Right.
years older than you?
Yeah. Her mother was 3 years older than I was. And Helen was 5 years older than I was.
Who are your mom and dads?
Who was my mom and dad?
Yeah.
Well, they were my mom and dad. I don't know how to answer that question.
Irma.
My dad's name was Ross, and my mother's name was Irma.
Oh. Okay. I won't say anymore.
You probably remember her.
No.
I do.
Anyway, so
Where were we?
we were Vestal High School.
Vestal grade school.
Grade school, pardon me. Grade school.
Vestal was a grade school. Went to the 8th grade.
Okay, and is that when Grandma married George? How did you end up in California? That's what I wasn't certain about.
Well, I don't know quite when she married George. It was probably maybe 1944, early 45. The summer of 45 was my last year that I went to the ranch. And from the ranch, what happened is I got a package of cookies, of all things, from my mother, your grandma. Unbelievable. And it had Mrs. George Willis on the return.
Oh,
And
dear.
that's how I found out she'd married George. So that had to be in 45. And then after that, then instead of going back to Portland, I went down to San Francisco where they were living.
So for a short time you lived with with George.
Well, 45. I was a junior, a sophomore in 45, I think, yeah. And then I lived part of my junior year, and then I moved in with Uncle Johnny and Aunt Pinky,
Oh,
and spent the rest of my school time, and I went from where they lived, which was almost San Leandro, clear to San Francisco every day on the A train when I went to school. Of course, I was pretty good at cutting school too.
on those rare occasions when you went to
When
school.
I decided to show up, yeah.
Okay, that was the piece that I was missing. I didn't realize that you lived with Uncle Johnny.
Oh, yeah.
And his wife's name was Pinky?
Well, they called her Pinky. Her name was Winona,
Oh, okay.
but they called her Pinky because I think she got really sunburned one time on one of their occasions, so they called her Pinky. She was a nice lady, and she was a great seamstress. I mean, she made all of my custom shirts for my cowboy shirts and everything. Just unreal.
So
I
straight.
think she made money doing that too, but she made.
So did you go into the Navy straight from high school?
Did I go where?
To the Navy straight from high school.
Straight from high school, I went up to Portland for a little while and then went up to Longview and lived with Helen and Hale and the kids and worked for Weyerhaeuser Timber Company.
Okay.
And then I went in the Navy from there. It was November of 48, I guess.
48 was a good year.
Sure. Yeah.
That's a very good year.
So anyhow, that's what I did then.
Okay. And then once you got out of the Navy, you stayed in California.
No, this time when I got out of the Navy, I went back to, actually they lived in Kelso then. And so I moved in with them at Kelso for a while and went back to work for Weyerhaeuser. But Weyerhaeuser people decided to go on strike. And I've always thought strikes were stupid. So I got a job with my uncle Les, who was worked for SP&S Railroad in Portland. He'd been with them forever. And he got me a job down in Madras. And I went to work at Madras at the station there. And after I'd been there for a while in, I want to say, maybe August or September, August of 1950, I got called back into the Navy because they couldn't even come close to winning the war unless they had me there. So anyhow, I went back in there, and then I was back in the Navy for almost 2 years. And then I went to California. That was there.
Interesting.
One of the main reasons I went to California after the Navy is that I knew that Portland, Oregon, and Seoul, Korea, or someplace were on the same parallel. And the colder, then you can't believe how cold it is. So I said, I'm not going back to this. Stupid.
Might as well be someplace warm and nice.
That's right. So that's what happened.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else you want to share just for fun?
No, you know. After I moved to California, I had already known Ted Miller, who was Betty's brother. We had been in the Navy together, and he got out early because he had kids. And so then I went back, hooked up with him, and he and I were working together. We started as framing carpenters out in the San Fernando Valley. And I figured out that that was a lot of hard work and not going ever anyplace. So when we finished the last house, my Uncle Glenn, who was Curtis Dehart's dad,
Okay.
lived in LA, and he knew some people, different people in the union. So I was in touch with him quite often. And he says, you know, I'll come down and see me. I can take you to meet some people that'll help you. Not that we were starving, but so went down, and Ted and I saw Uncle Glenn. Uncle Glenn took us over to the head of a union, carpenters union there. And the guy says, oh, I can use you two boys just like that. And they gave me a journeyman's license because of my experience in the Navy. I was a damage controlman woodworker when I was in the Navy. So he got me and Ted just got his journeyman's license from a framing union. So then we went to work as partners on everything we did. So we worked but we got a job hanging blinds and setting Formica tops. And we were extremely good at setting Formica tops. So then, that company went out of business. I don't know why, but bad management or something. Then we opened up our own shop, our own Formica shop.
So you and Ted.
And then we were just struggling with our own shop, small shop. But my ex-petty officer, higher rate than me even, in the Navy, called me up and says, come on out and have dinner with me. They lived in Montebello, and we were living in like Santa Monica, West LA. So then went over to his house. He says, you know, my company is looking for someone to get together with, make Formica tops. And he was the head superintendent of a big cabinet shop, really big. So we try anything, right? So we went over and met them all, and we all got together and made a deal, so everybody made money and opened and moved our Formica shop out to where they had their shop, which was in Glendale, right next door to Forest Lawn.
Oh, interesting. So,
So
cool.
then, from then on, we really, really grew.
So that's where Glendale became part of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's right, because your mom came to work for us.
I thought that was Annie Helen.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
I'm sorry,
okay.
Annie Helen. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I got to get them. Helen came to work for us as our secretary there in Glendale. So from there on,
Yeah.
things just kept getting better and better. Anyhow, that's a brief synopsis.
And that's lovely. Thank you.
Anytime.